Alright, y'all. Now, today we're shooting with the GoPro. And we're going to talk a little bit about these guys on the internet that compare speakers. Okay, granted, these Jensen LS6s sounded a hell of a lot better than these Radio Shack Mach 1s. I just scored these Mach 1s, and I intend to restore them. Whoever had them before me, it looks like they had started. They got the foam stripped out really nice, trimmed off really nice. So they're gonna need new foam surrounds, of course. And a lot of people don't know that you'd leave the L pad here alone. You'd change the crossover inside these things, and you would have one hell of a good sounding speaker. And a lot of people think that this is the tweet. This is the tweet. The mid-range is behind this horn. And it was an early compression mid-range driver. I'm not going to say early. Actually, I already did, but early is not the right word. It was a 70s. Those things have been around since 20s, probably before. And they're supported in there so the coils don't get damaged while I'm waiting on the foam surround rings. Yeah, he did a pretty good job. Not the best, but pretty good. Yeah. But, no, my original point of this is you read a lot of people comparing speakers of this caliber, and these things, you know, they were, I don't know, $199 each at Radio Shack back in the day. And they were Radio Shack's flagship. Those Jensen LS6s were actually a little bit below. There's no comparison in the sound. The Jensens are crystal clear, but for the purpose at hand, I mean, these were made to play 70s music with a lot of 35 to about 60 or 70 hertz thump pound to it. The old rock pound, not this modern day ghetto crap. And that was generally between 35 and 60 hertz, which these excelled at. In fact, there's supposedly they could go 20 to 20. I've never measured a set of these. This is only the second set that I've had my hands on in my life, and the first set that I've actually owned. I never owned the other set, even though they sat around for years in my hangar. Dude just never got out of jail and came back to get them before I fucking sold that hangar, so they stayed there and with the hangar when I left. But now, a lot of speakers get a bad rap, and I mean, you know, you hear guys talking about white van speakers. Usually, if they're talking about white van speakers, they know jack shit about audio. That's a buzzword that was created back in the news group days to trap amateurs like that, and it worked really well, and maybe it legitimately caught on as a saying, but I doubt it. These guys would compare, they're not going to compare to, say, a Forte or a Forte 2 without the crossover mod. You do the crossover mod, and yeah, they're a fair comparison. In fact, they're more than fair. And actually, you don't even have to mod the crossover. Just rip that bitch out and put in a decent one. And those guys there, they're, I don't know, again, I think they claim 25 to 20 on those. This one is truly 20 to 20. Actually, it'll go a little bit lower. But for that 70s thump, these were the shit to have back in the day. They were the absolute best shit to have. You couldn't go out and buy an expensive speaker that at high volume did any better than these, because at high volume they all distort a little bit. These didn't distort as much as the fancy ones, so yeah, at high volume these had that thump that you wanted. I mean, you'd hear that did it when you played some Leonard Skinner, whatever. At low volume, these things suck dog shit, and that may be another thing. They may be comparing these at low volume to, say, Fortes or Klipsch or whatever, at low volume, and that's an unfair comparison because the stock crossover in these didn't even start working correctly and distributing the power correctly until it was around 45-50 watts. I mean, you know, it wasn't the 8 or 10 watt minimum that you're used to. It was 45-50 watts before that crossover became effective and distributed the power like it was supposed to, where you had it dialed in on the dials. And at low volume, those dials have almost no effect. So, and this guy, he's excellent. He's got a crossover in him that is fully effective as low as 1 watt. A couple of other guys I've put crossovers in that are pretty effective. The Ramstills, I just used a capacitor and I changed the what do you call it? I changed the tins in the Ramstills for Electro Voice because the stock Ramstills were a little bit crispy for me. And I had the Electro Voice laying around. But anyway, I just figured I'd show off these new Radio Shack and kind of explain, you know, these guys got a bad rap, but back in the day, I was around back in the day. These things were the king. It didn't matter if you had my kind of money, or if you had Trump kind of money, or if you had broke motherfucker kind of money. These things were the bosses back in the day. You know, I know a lot of people that used to go into Radio Shack, man. We'd walk by the front of the Radio Shack, sneak in the front real quick if the sales guy wasn't there, crank the fucking stereo with these things blasting. And then they came out with the Mach 2s, and the Mach 2s, yeah, they deserve a bad rap. But the Mach 1s, they were really a high quality unit. I mean, that's real wood. Cardboard on the back, but nice wood cabinets. Not fucking particle board. Again, no, those walnut ones over there. That one's ash. Particle board. The DAs are rosewood. My homemade one down there is cheap-ass pine. And it may not even be pine. It's just cheap-ass leftover lumber. And there's some decent shit over there too. But when you read these guys comparing speakers, really, you've got to listen to those speakers on your amp. Because if I hook these speakers to, say, that Radio Shack amp right there, they're going to be crispier than fuck. The highs are going to drive you out of the room. And that's our Radio Shack RCA brand, 2001. So that's a vintage, nice little collector's piece too. But say if I hooked them up to that Techwood, the Harman Kardon, or the very bottom JVC, they would sound excellent. The Danon, the mid-ranges would just, they wouldn't drive you out of the room, but they would overwhelm the highs and the lows. Pioneer, yeah, that thing, it's an ongoing project. I've got the caps in it, I cleaned up the power supply, changed the transformers, put in heavier transformers. It's still distorted as fuck. But it's a Pioneer, what do you expect? One of them things. Anyway, my new babies. It'll be a couple of weeks before the foam surrounds get here. Anyway, we'll holler at y'all later.